Welcome along to the Matchbook NFL Christmas special. I'm your host, Daniel, joined by Judah, Drew, and Sam. As always, we've had a full complement every single week. It's amazing, Drew. So much so, we're going to give everyone the bye week for Christmas next week in week 17. Let's bench everyone before the playoffs, keep them fresh. So, are you ready for one more pod in 2023, mate?
Without question, and honestly, the late bye, this is huge. Like we're going to be in absolute peak form, no injuries, no fatigue, playoff ready. So yeah, this is fun, and yeah, it's a great week of football. The fact that we get Christmas Eve and Christmas Day football is huge. For those who have been betting for years and years and years, kind of know that Christmas Eve is like usually it's like a very, very, very rough hang for sports betting. And the fact that we get virtually an entire NFL slate instead of, kind of the doldrums is awesome.
Yeah, Sam, I want you to give us the Premier League perspective because we brought in a Christmas Eve, first Premier League game in 28 years to be on Christmas Eve. And there's all hell's breaking loose. Clubs aren't happy. A lot of people aren't happy. I'm like, would you have a look over at America, what they're doing here? You wouldn't last 5 minutes, but it's great for yourself, Sam, and me, and all the football and NFL fans in Ireland and the UK to watch a bit of Premier League and then sit through loads of NFL games for the next few days.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely perfect, isn't it? This is the time of year you want to be sat at home with a couple of drinks, a big box of Quality Street or something like that, and just watching the games. And I think this is what it's all about. And oh man, I just can't wait. This is going to be a fun few days, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Judah, you're going to be working throughout the Christmas period. I mean, this is the price you pay for doing what you love and working in football, mate.
It's a great gift I have. I think I'll never complain about, a 16-game football slate, no matter the circumstances. I'm just excited to watch a bunch of football this weekend.
Yeah, sorry, I just caught a YouTube comment there as I was about to big up the week. The games this week are brutal. so we're going to be doing a little bit better than that. There are some quality games in amongst some not so maybe quality games and really peak times than when we needed it. But really looking forward to the games. And thank you throughout the year for listening on the Matchbook NFL podcast. We're hoping to bring you a few winners one more time in 2023. Hit that like button on YouTube, subscribe completely for free. And those podcasts listeners, we don't forget about you. Do hit that 5-star review wherever you're listening to the Matchbook NFL podcast. And lastly, check out Matchbook Betting Exchange, particularly if you're looking to get the best value on singles or multiples. Really liquid markets a couple of hours before kickoffs. We're going to cover Browns at Texans, Jags at Bucs, Cowboys at Dolphins, and Ravens at the Niners. And we'll start with the Browns at the Texans. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. You can see that Browns are 176 favorites, the Texans 2.3. The point spread here sees the Texans get a 2.5 head start at 206. The total is 40.5 now. It was 40.0 earlier. Drew, take it away on this game. You have a couple of plays here. So look, we won't have CJ Stroud, which is a pity, but this Browns defense, it'll be very interesting to see how they get on ultimately against this quite decent Texans offense, obviously without their main couple of guys.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key here. This was going to be one of the most important kind of understanding what's at what stage CJ Stroud is in his development. As you kind of looked at sort of how his arc has gone this season, and the fact that he's going to miss because of the concussion is just it's brutal for anyone who wants to, kind of have a better idea of how CJ Stroud would perform in against an elite defense in a really high leverage environment. And Case Keenum, I can tell you how he's going to perform against an elite defense in a high leverage environment, and it's not good. The tape on Keenum last week was unbelievably weak. He absolutely escaped with a victory, snatched it out of the claws of defeat in some way that I can't really wrap my head around. The Titans cornerbacks had 3 or 4 very straightforward plays to make key interceptions late in that game that would have either sealed the game or basically put away the Texans. They don't do it. Texans get a chance to, D'Amico Ryans makes a couple of in-game absolute boneheaded decisions in overtime. Doesn't end up paying any consequence. I can't even really tell you the state of the Texans right now, that they're anywhere close to the way that they're being rated with Case Keenum under center and with the injuries that they've sustained in the skill position group. It sounds like Nico Collins may go. It sounds like in general, the offensive line hasn't had any other meaningful losses since they put Titus Howard on IR. So at least they have that going for them. But if they kind of do some self-evaluation and realize we can't let this game be in the hands of Case Keenum, he's taking too many sacks. He's holding onto the ball for an absolute eternity. That's not good against the Browns. newsflash, he's in absolute deep trouble in this game. Damian Pierce and the running attack for the Texans has been atrocious to the point where I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is the Devin Singletary as RB1 in this game, and Pierce gets kind of shuffled down into the second or third string. But that said, a lot of it is just kind of conceptual framework of the way they are setting up their run blocking and the kind of weaknesses of this O-line in terms of creating running lanes. And so I think realistically the Texans are stuck in a very, very bad spot here. I don't see realistically how they turn this into a competitive game. We're seeing the market fluctuate around Pick'em here. It's flipped on the news of CJ Stroud not going to where it's kind of going to threaten 3. I think that's right. I think it should be 3. And I think this total is too high. So I actually played both Browns 2.5 and under 40. And I think they are actually pretty correlated as well, because this is Browns defense against a unit that I don't have a ton of confidence in even at home. And I think, the Browns offensive injuries are notable in and of themselves. They're basically on the entire second unit here for the offensive line. You have one kind of game breaker in Amari Cooper, and Joe Flacco has shown that he has some propensity to play a little bit loose and turn the ball over, which for what it's worth, Singletary playing much better at the cornerback role over the last half of the season. So I think realistically this should be a pretty closely contested game. I think it's going to be field goals, not touchdowns. And I think the Browns ultimately escape with a 3-point win. So anything under 3 is a good bet for the Browns, and anything under 40 is a good bet to the under, in my opinion.
Okay, both angles covered there in terms of a total play and on the Browns. Sam, it was hard to disagree with it, and Drew said, is it too simple to be back in the Browns minus 2.5 with this defense?
No, I'd love to come here trying to come up with some sort of clever reason why the Texans have got a chance, but I mean, they always have a chance, I suppose, but I really don't see them winning this. I think Case Keenum just simply isn't good enough. He's a career backup pretty much for a reason. And now he's going to face a Browns defense that is going to feast on him, frankly. Number 1 ranked defense in DVOA. I just don't see this being particularly good, because as well as CJ Stroud missing out, like, we don't really know exactly what sort of condition Nico Collins and Will Anderson will be in. I don't want any part of the Texans with this sort of level of injuries. And yeah, for me, I think as well, Drew, with the under, I love that as well. I think this is going to be quite a boring game to watch, but it's one I think the Browns will win. Yeah, 3+ points, something like that. It's not going to be a fun one, but it will hopefully get the job done for our bets anyway.
Okay, so Sam lead Browns, but also leading under. Judah, you were just playing the under here, so talk to us a little bit. Maybe what's putting you off the Browns? I know it's not literally like one or the other bet here, but ultimately you're siding with just under 40.5.
Yeah, I think this is going to be kind of a typical 2023, really slow-paced, run-heavy game where we've seen totals of like 36.5. This is a team, the Browns.
Sorry to cut you across mid-flow, Judah, but that's just so depressing how we've gone here. When I first started watching the NFL, the high totals were only just beginning. 50.5 was the average. It was the good times. How we just got here? I know that's a too tough a question.
I had sticker shock seeing 40 in a Browns game. I'm like, what? 40?
That's what I'll say about that is, in every bit we have the 36s now, I have full faith that, in 2-3 years time, we'll be back the other way. That's just kind of the way the NFL goes. It's just like a constant rubber band effect of, teams adjusting and whatnot. But yeah, I think this is kind of this typical game we've seen this season. The Browns are far easier to run against and pass against, obviously. I was actually really excited if Stroud were back to back the Texans, just because I think the current iteration of the Browns defense is a little bit overrated. But kind of as Drew mentioned, I don't think that really matters with Case Keenum. I wouldn't even be shocked if Davis Mills gets a bunch of run here. But this total, I do not think moved enough for CJ Stroud, not only because of the efficiency of the Texans offense, but just because of the pace effects of going from a guy in CJ Stroud who is throwing the ball very far downfield, which leads to a higher rate of incompletions, higher rate of yards gained, which just means more plays and more possessions, that I don't think this style will kind of be the same with Case Keenum. This is not a Browns. I mean, Joe Flacco has been, I think, outperforming his expectations, and he hasn't been particularly great. But that's pretty revealing of the state of the Browns offense. I just see this as a very run-heavy, slow, bad offense type of game. Maybe, I don't really know. I feel like it's going to come down to a final field goal here, but I do think it's going to be a very slow, and under 40.5 seems very appealing given the current nature of the NFL in 2023.
Yeah, maybe for a podcast for the off season, perhaps. Under 40.5, 193 for Judah. Browns minus 2.5 for Sam at around 188 currently on Matchbook, and Drew going for both of them and saying they are interlinked if you do want to play both in that game. That is Christmas Eve, 6 o'clock. There'll be a lot of 6 o'clock games, some of which we'll get back to in the any other bets. We're going to go to Christmas Eve, 9:05 UK time for Jags at the Bucs. So take a look at the betting currently on the Matchup Betting Exchange. You will have Bucs ever so slight favorites at 191 on the money line. They are laying 1 point at 198, and the total here is 42.5. Sam, over to you. You're leaning towards the Bucs money line at the moment, but there's no official bet.
Yeah, no official bet here. I think this is a game I'm a bit wary of. I think my kind of main thoughts here are, if Trevor Lawrence does play, just sort of what condition is he going to be in? I think one thing I've kind of really taken from this season in particular, and I think it's Brock Purdy earlier in the season that's kind of really behind my thinking on this, is when a player comes back or quarterback comes back from a concussion, I feel like they're not quite themselves for a week or two. And with this one, at the moment, it's a no bet. If Lawrence will play, I'm sure we're going to see the market move. And when that market moves, then if I think the number's right, I'm going to pounce, because I don't think it's going to be the Trevor Lawrence we know and we love watching. And if the price doesn't reflect that, then I'm happy to put my money on it. But otherwise, it's a bit of a watching brief for me.
Okay, Judah, are you on similar lines here with a no bet?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that the current line is almost certainly wrong in that it's pricing some probability of Lawrence playing and some probability of Lawrence playing, but it's a binary. He's either playing or he's not. That I think betting at this stage is not something I'm particularly interested in. But if this line moves to, like, I'm going to assume Lawrence is out, just because I think the majority of quarterbacks in concussions don't make it back in a week. Although I guess the Pittsburgh Steelers, might have a word with their players all coming back from concussions. But if this line gets to like Tampa Bay minus 2.5, minus 3, I will absolutely want to buy the Jaguars, led by CJ Beathard, just because. Well, there are a couple of things here. Number one, Tampa Bay is really at the peak of the market here. They put together a terrific performance against the Packers, but I think fundamentally they are the same team they've been the entire season, and that is a far below average team. And generally the market kind of misprices the going from very good starting quarterback to backup quarterback. And I still think the Jags are a better, I shouldn't say a better team than the Bucs now, but certainly if this game reaches 3 or so, I'd be interested in backing the Jags against a very, very beatable Bucs defense, both on the ground now as they're kind of dealt with a bunch of linebacking injuries. I'm interested in backing the Jags at 3, but this current line right now just reflects too much uncertainty and is not the truth one way or another.
Okay, good advice from Sam and Judah not to have a bet at the moment. So, Drew, why am I looking at Bucs and over for you right now, mate?
Yeah, I probably stepped in it here because I could probably get a better price. Because I guess I'll step back a second. The Trevor Lawrence concussion protocol thing is a tough read. We don't have a ton of evidence to say how the Jags independent neurologist is clearing people one way or the other. But I do think that in general, there's a whiff around the league of we're in the part of the season where the concussion protocol is more of a suggestion. But especially when this game has a lot of leverage for the Jags, there might be, I don't know, some reason to think that Trevor Lawrence, who's been calling his number through knee injuries and ankle injuries already this season, feels fine and good to go. So it's to me at least an assumption that he will play. Which I think turns this total into like a 44.5 from 42.5. So I played an over here. Bucs, I think, are also the right side, less so because of kind of doubting the Jags offense and more just believing the Jags defense is, still overrated by market, and the Bucs offense at full strength right now looks like they can put serious pressure on these guys through the air. I think it's worth kind of reflecting a little bit on the Bucs performance against the Packers. Like, clearly the Packers are drawing scrutiny for the way their defense performed in that game, and I think that's fair. But I would kind of like to point out that I don't remember seeing Chris Godwin looking that good since he tore his ACL. Like, he was very, very effective in that game. And I think you pair that with Mike Evans against the Jags, passing defense that can definitely be taken advantage of over the intermediate and middle portion of the field. I think this spells trouble for the Jags defense. And there's a lot of game states here where this is score and answer for both of these teams. This has lots of whiffs of Texans Bucs. Where it could be team with the ball last wins, but I think the Bucs are going to be able to score here. I like what they've gotten out of Rachaad White in terms of balancing and rounding out their offense, and I think the defensive injuries for the Bucs are still being a little bit under captured by market. Now, it's worth noting that I rewatched the Trevor Lawrence performance in that fourth quarter after the head injury, which I'm assuming happened on the goal line intentional grounding. And after that, he was wildly inaccurate. Like, you don't see it on the normal broadcast. They had to see it on all 22, but some of the throws that he missed were like not even in the right area code of the intended receiver. Now, he did have one very, very decent throw to Calvin Ridley that probably was a touchdown, but couldn't get called a touchdown. But still there's a chance that Lawrence just isn't right. And I've kind of found my way into a really terrible bet here on the over, but I still think that Bucs defense and the injuries they have, Jags defense being, susceptible in, particularly when they're in the fact that they're susceptible when they're in a positive game state, to me, I think just opens the door for this to be a much more high scoring affair than market would make right now at 42.5. So if I could only have one play, it's the over. I'm assuming it's going to be Trevor Lawrence, but no high confidence for me at the moment that you're going to get outstanding Trevor Lawrence and not a guy who's, skipping balls to players' feet. So kind of nervous that I probably should have just passed on this game. And I played into an over and maybe made a bad bet. We'll see.
Over 42.5. We'll lock it in 193 currently, but do check out the injury news come Christmas Eve. That's 9:05 kickoff in the UK, and at 9:25, it's the Cowboys at the Dolphins. The good old Cowboys turned up there last week, big time in terms of their away record, and I think they're now 4-3 or 3-4 on the road. It's Cowboys underdogs here in Miami at 204. The point spread sees Cowboys get a 1.5 head start, actually a 1 point head start now, and the total for this is currently set at 49.5. Judah, a lot of bettors this week will be gone. Cowboys away from home, not trusting them again. Miami, this price is too good to be true on Miami. I'm just going to take the Dolphins. You are taking that, but obviously it's a bit more nuanced than that. So explain some of your thinking around that, aside from the boring away versus home records, the Cowboy. I know there is a lot in that, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that accounts for 0% of my my handicap.
That's good to hear. Well, for a lot of people, some people be like 100%. Those better, so it is more.
Yeah, that's certainly not my style. There are kind of two main angles here. Number one, the Cowboys play a ton of man coverage, which is a particular issue for them because they don't have the personnel. At quarterback, DeRon Bland has been absolutely terrific, kind of once the ball is thrown and making interceptions, but his ability to prevent separation is in the bottom 10th percentile, and that's basically true across the board for the Cowboys. And in man coverage as opposed to zone coverage, the talent on the field matters a little bit more. Where in man coverage, good talent beats out. The good wide receivers beat lesser cornerbacks, and good cornerbacks beat lesser wide receivers. There's a huge talent mismatch over here when you're looking at guys like Tyreek Hill, who I assume will be back, and Jalen Waddle going up against a really bad Dallas secondary. And you kind of have that on one side. And the second part of this is that the Dallas defense, or pass defense, has been really, really good on the backs of two things. Number one, their ability to generate turnovers, which are, I think, somewhat less fluky than other teams just because of how aggressive they are, but also their ability to generate pressure and do so quickly. That is kind of mitigated when you play a team like the Dolphins, who get rid of the ball in 2.3 seconds and do so downfield. I don't really care how good your pass rush is. Nobody is getting home quickly or that quickly where Tua is already going to be getting rid of the ball. So you kind of combine the angle of a man coverage team who do not have the personnel to match up with the Dolphins receivers. Those guys are going to get open quickly, which will also mitigate the pass rush, the kind of best asset of the Cowboys defense. And that kind of all correlates or corresponds to what I think will be a Dolphins onslaught of offense in what I think is actually a pretty good matchup. The only thing I'll note is that I think the Dolphins, their entire starting offensive line was hurt, which I think would kind of hurt this case, but I do think it would further elevate the passing attack as opposed to the rushing attack. And I think people would kind of reverse that because the Dolphins know, and this has been something that the Dolphins and 49ers have done this season, which is kind of work around pretty poor offensive lines by getting rid of the ball very quickly. I would be a little bit concerned if some of these guys from the Dolphins offensive line end up missing, but I would still be, no matter what, very, very bullish on this Dolphins passing attack. But as it currently stands, I still like -1.5 just because of these kind of two matchup angles that I think really elevate the Dolphins in the spot.
Okay, the slight alternative handicap there with Judah. Dolphins -2.5. Drew, you landed the under with Bills Cowboys last week. Is it similar sort of thinking here this week? The current line is around 50.0.
It is, but I honestly will say that the under for Bills Cowboys didn't hit because of any of the reasons I thought it was. It was very different. I mean, it was somewhat, I guess, in that I kind of believed in the Bills defense was playing better. But that goes double for the Dolphins defense right now. And it's weird because they lost some guys that I would have rated as important, like Jalen Phillips and Jerome Baker. And they've had other injuries in the secondary to some important pieces like Xavier Howard, Javon Holland, and Deshaun Elliott. But somehow, some way, they shut out the Jets last week, and maybe that was more about the Jets than the Dolphins. Who knows? But when you have 0.1 yards per play over a half of football, that's that you sit up and take notice. So it had to be in some way related to the way the Dolphins schemed and played defensively. The real angle here for an under, though, for me is kind of looking at the way the Bills defended the Cowboys, specifically schematic choices that they made. And the fact that this correlates like so clearly to what we saw last year at the end of the season when the Dolphins went on the road at San Francisco, and San Francisco put together basically a brilliant game plan to get physical with those wide receivers, upset them at the line of scrimmage, and just in general kind of put a stick in the spokes of the Dolphins passing attack. And then the following week, the Chargers basically were like, oh, that's how you beat these guys? Okay. And they just replicated that blueprint. And I think that like the Dolphins, the Vic Fangio and company have the personnel, have the kind of wherewithal to look at the tape from the Bills game and be like, oh, that's how you slow down the Cowboys offense? Okay. And kind of replicate exactly that approach. And I think it'll be pretty effective. I think ultimately, expecting a solid bounce here from a Cowboys team that's pretty one-dimensional against, what I would think be the most difficult passing defense that they have faced this season. Is kind of notable. And ultimately, this is, I think, going to be a pretty closely contested game. Judah's scaring me a little bit with his bullishness on the Dolphins passing attack against the Cowboys defense. I look more at the health of the offensive line against the Cowboys defense that got embarrassed last week on the ground. And I think that there is a chance that the Dolphins take a little bit too many lessons on how the Bills beat the Cowboys last week offensively and kind of lean into their rushing attack. That may work. It may shorten the game. But I'm not like especially sold on the quality of play we're seeing from Tua right now. There's definitely something to be said about his kind of now multiple years in a row. And yes, there were injuries that contributed last year, especially, but like there's definitely a little bit of degradation to the quality of play we see from him between September and December. I don't know what it is. But I don't in a year where so many quarterbacks have gotten hurt or been underwhelming, I'm not really just impressed with what we're seeing from Tua, which is, to me at least, a red flag against the Cowboys defense that does have a couple of elite playmakers. So I think the Cowboys defense can get right. I think the Dolphins defense is in a beautiful spot to replicate the success the Bills defense had last week. And so for those points, I come up with a total that's pretty clearly under 51 here. So under 51 for me, or I played under 51 and sitting under 50, juiced -113-ish around right now. I think that's still a fine play. I would put under until we get to like 48.5, and then I would back off. So I would still advocate for this thing coming in under the total.
Okay, yeah, Sam, some concerns there. Read the over. Some of Tua's play perhaps this time of year. Also the Cowboys last week. So with that in mind, try and make the case the opposite way for the over.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting points that Drew made there. And I think that the Tua thing in particular is really interesting because he's sort of this is one of those things, like now you said it, it's kind of sort of rattled through my mind a bit. And I obviously need to kind of go back and look to see whether this is the case, but it feels like this is a guy who almost every season now is going to be red hot in the MVP race for the start of the season, then just drop off as we hit these winter months. And I don't obviously there's injuries last year. I don't know necessarily the reasons for all of that, but it's something that it feels like a narrative that is appearing, whether it's fair or not, I don't know. But yeah, I kind of came into this. We got the highest total on the board for this game. I came into this wanting to back the under. I generally think on the games we think are going to be massive shootouts, real blockbusters. I think quite often we end up seeing maybe some of the faults with those teams when they face good defenses or whatever, and we see sometimes more sloppier games. And I think there's an argument that both the Dolphins and the Cowboys, amongst this sort of top tier teams in the NFL, are more than capable of dishing out some pretty sloppy performances in certain places on the field at various times. And I wanted to back the under, but the more I looked at the numbers, I don't want to read too much into last week. And I think the over has to be the play here, because even accounting for that, obviously 10 points put up against the Bills last week, this is still a Cowboys offense that's put up 211 points in the past 6 games. That's 35 points a game, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's still slightly higher than their season average, which is 30.8, which is the second best in the league. Beaten by who? The Dolphins with 31.5. And I think we kind of need to also take into account that the Dolphins have faced some pretty bad offenses this past few weeks as well, that maybe kind of flattered what we think of their defense in terms of, we've seen the Raiders, we've seen the Jets twice, Commanders, Titans. I just look at these teams. I know definitely there's some sort of schematic issues potentially, but I just look at the playmakers and I have to back the over. It might be a very basic thing to do, and I hate the fact I'm betting the over on something that is so high, and this feels like chalk, but I have to do it.
Okay, yeah, sort of gives room for thinking there, really going for the under or the over. Jude, I'll give you a right to reply on your boy Tua there, getting a bit of a battering from Drew, and Sam not doing much to alleviate that. So, any final words on Tua before we move on?
Tua and my boy, that's not something I ever thought I'd hear. You gotta trust McDaniel. You gotta trust that
Yes.
he'll come through. We have basically no sample of Tua and Mike McDaniel late in the season, considering he was out with concussions last year.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird that like you go back to like week 7, he's 15th in EPA per play right now among quarterbacks, 0.1. Not really that impressive considering what he's working with weapons wise. And I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe like just the fact that Hill and Waddle are so dynamic against coverage that's underwhelming is the key factor here. But there is something in the back of my head about exactly how to properly rate Tua that I still haven't really landed the plane on this, but I don't think he's very good.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair, but the Dolphins' offensive output as a whole, I think is still elite until proven otherwise.
Yeah, fascinating how that game's going to go. And Tua over the next few weeks' time reveals all in there. So we will see how they get on this year. We will go to the final game here. This is the December 25th leading into St. Stephen's Day here in Ireland, or Boxing Day in the UK. Monday Night Football officially. Ravens at the 49ers. What a game we have in store here. Ravens 298 underdogs to the Niners, who are 144. Ravens are getting a 5-point head start. It was 5.5 there earlier on this morning. And the total here is 47. Judah, straight back to you on this one. You're playing the over here. I mean, this is simple. There are two very good offenses here. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, and you could make the argument that what I'm about to say is a reason to bet the Niners, and I think that's fair, which is that when you have like 95th percentile defense, 95th percentile offense, in theory, that should kind of meet somewhere in the middle. But I think that the kind of way this interaction works, especially with the Niners right now, is that like the 95th percentileness of the 49ers offense just kind of far outweighs the Ravens defense. And there's kind of some pricing of this Niners defense slowing down this Ravens defense, is slowing down the Niners offense, and I would just completely reject that. Yes, in theory, the Ravens match up perfectly with the Niners with their linebackers and they're so dominant over the middle of the field, which is the area which the Niners operate with. But it does not matter, I don't think, with the current state of the Niners offense. And on the flip side, I think you're right that this is a Ravens team that's going to score. I think the Keaton Mitchell injury really matters, especially against a 49ers front that has struggled to defend the run this year. And I think the Ravens really lack any explosiveness now from the running back position. But this is a guy, I mean, it wouldn't be shocking if Lamar Jackson's the MVP favorite after this week, if he kind of comes up huge. And like, he's been terrific all season. I think they can rely on his legs a little more so now with the running back injuries. But at the end of the day, these are two of the best offenses in the NFL. The Niners right now are just absolutely unstoppable. We've talked about this all season, about the sample we have of when all of these guys are healthy. This is by far the best offense in the NFL. They are going to score. I think they're as good a bet as any to score, 4 touchdowns every single week, if not more. The Ravens are going to know they're going to have to play with pace. They're not going to be able to necessarily just kind of stifle this Niners offense. Maybe that is their game plan. I don't want to coach my bet here. But the Ravens, I think, are going to score. The Niners are an absolute wagon. I like the over here. That's pricing in some bit of the Ravens defense slowing down the Niners offense.
Okay, you've gone all the way, Sam, with eventually backing the Niners here. I'm guessing a lot of similar thinking to some of the cases Judah made there.
Yeah, I think so. These are two teams who I really enjoy watching, but the Niners are the best team in the NFL. I can't really consider anyone else right now. And I feel like I say this nearly every week. I was so wrong on Brock Purdy, and my apology tour is going to continue all the way till mid-February, I think. But yeah, you got the third and fourth best offenses in terms of points per game here, with the Niners third and Ravens fourth. But I think that doesn't really tell the whole story about how good this Niners offense is. And I think we have to kind of consider that in the past few weeks, we know the Ravens defense is really good. However, the Rams did really well against them. And that game on another day could have totally gone the other way, and we could have seen the Rams win. Bengals and Browns both put up good scores against them. With obviously the Browns won that game. I mean, the less said about the Chargers, the better. But obviously last week, Jags lost, was it 23-7? I don't think that kind of really told the story about the Jags offense. Well, less the Jags offense, but more how, despite being fairly kind of one-dimensional, they managed to actually do pretty well for the most part. We obviously had a touchdown that was overturned, maybe wrongly. We had missed field goals. We had fumbles. I think on another day, on most days, that would have been far closer. And I do think that the Ravens defense is perhaps not, well, it is very, very good. It's top tier. But I do think that this Niners offense is considerably better as an offense than the Ravens defense is as a defense, if that kind of makes sense. And I'm expecting quite a big win for the Niners here. I think they'll cover the 5.5. And I think they're just going to underline why they're the best team in the NFL.
Okay, Niners currently minus 5.0 on the match betting exchange, 194. True, on the Jags Ravens game there, they did miss a lot of field goals. I don't know how they didn't have any points at half time, and that, I think I'm right in saying, watching a bit of your live stream, that it disallowed touchdown cost you your second half over. So condolences to you and Andy and all the team at the Deep Dive podcast.
Yeah, I don't know how that second half over didn't hit still. Half a point short. Actually, the sequence where the Ravens didn't cash in with the touchdown late was even more annoying.
When they kicked the field goal, was
they kicked a field goal on a drive that 1,000,000% should have ended in a touchdown. I don't know why they took their feet off the gas there. And honestly, like I got a good number here, so I guess I'm happy. I bet 46 to the over for Ravens Niners. But I guess just to kind of soften the case a little bit, because I agree with everything Judah and Sam said, the Niners are a truck. the Niners should win this game. The Niners have made it look easy against, better opponents this season, frankly. And I think they should be able to get into the 30s here offensively because of the way that their offensive pieces match up against the Ravens defense. And, the Ravens defense was a good team, good squad to back last week against the Jags, because the Jags had all these moving parts on the offensive line. And you could really kind of, put the Ravens in you put the Jaguars in a box a little bit with some of your exotic pressures. That does not work against this Niners team. No matter how you slice it, you're at a disadvantage with, all of the various kind of complications of the Shanahan scheme. I just don't see how Niners aren't getting their number on this one. And then it's kind of a matter of the Niners defense up against the Ravens offense, which I also think is kind of, even with the injuries the Ravens have sustained, which are non-trivial, right? Ravens potentially without Ronnie Stanley. We know Keaton Mitchell is not going to play as he's done for the season with the ACL. And there are questions swirling about the availability of Zay Flowers. And those are three really important pieces on this offense. I completely admit that. But for what it's worth, Lamar Jackson, in the absence of Mark Andrews, has been able to elevate some of the contributions from a lot of these, guys who were second level players. And I think Gus Edwards is a perfectly fine running back to lean on. And I think, you can make some noise against this Niners defense over the last half of the season. Niners defense weirdly ranking 25th in EPA per play allowed, which is bizarrely low. I was not expecting to see that as I was kind of combing through recent performances here. And some of that may be the absence of Hufanga. Some of that may be they just don't have to play that hard because their offense is going to score a touchdown every time the ball is in their hands. But outside of the one kind of real throttling that they put on the Jags, I haven't really been especially impressed with this Niners defense for a while now. And I definitely think if their pass rush is not getting home, which against Lamar Jackson, none really do, then I could see opportunity here for the Ravens to have some offensive success and put a little bit of pressure, at least through the the meat of the game on the Niners, which would help an over surely. Ultimately, if we get bad news on injuries for this Ravens team, and by the way, it's worth noting the Ravens are in a pretty horrific spot. Having to travel across the country this late in the season off of another really hard fought road game is not great. But that said, I think that hurts the Ravens defense more than it keeps them from being non-competitive. So that should just help the over even more. And maybe I've just talked myself into this a little bit too hard, but I think this is going to be a higher scoring affair and one of my favorite totals of the week. Fingers crossed we get some Ronnie Stanley in the game.
Okay, over 47 for Judah and Drew and Sam, keeping it simple with the Niners minus 5.0. Full recap of all those bets and the bets coming up available on Matchbook Insights on matchbook.com, or search Matchbook Insights from Friday morning. So that'll keep you busy around Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, a full bet recap of all the guys' picks. Sam, there's two in the any other bet section, the Raiders and the Broncos. So look, not any week really is probably a good week to back these two teams. So I'll let you make the case.
Yeah, I feel quite dirty doing this, don't I? But yeah, let's talk about the Broncos first. I still don't think they're particularly good, but one thing I do know is that they are better than the New England Patriots. And 6 points, I think, is a fair sort of handicap here. Pat's offense is obviously, do I have to say improved? They've scored 38 points in the past 2 weeks. I'll say that. So there's some evidence potentially that they're improving above their average for the season, which was 13.3 points per game. But I just don't think this offense is particularly good. And I think given that the Broncos kind of actually are playing for something, I think that is going to be ultimately kind of what decides this, especially with home field advantage. And I think 6 points, I'm more than happy to bet them by a touchdown. Then next up, the Raiders, plus 10 against the Chiefs. Now, it's only been 3 weeks or something, 4 weeks since we saw these teams meet. And that was, I think the Chiefs won by 14. I think it's going to be a bit closer this time. We've seen the Raiders over the past couple of weeks maybe look slightly improved, I'd say. Admittedly, the Chargers, yeah, what can we really say about that? We'll talk about that in a minute, I think. But sorry, Dad. I just think that this Chiefs team, I think I've said this before, it feels like they give inferior teams a chance to hang with them far more than they should. They don't seem to kind of, in the same way that the Cowboys or a Dolphins team could kind of really put their foot on the gas and kind of accelerate away from their opposition when they're playing someone far inferior to them. It feels like the Chiefs just rarely do this. They don't have the capability to do this. And over the past few weeks, they've let the Packers score 27, Bills scored 20, which is obviously against a good team, and even the Patriots scored 17. So I don't know. I do think this Chiefs team, there's still something not quite right there. They've now kind of, Patrick Mahomes has done the villain arc. He's now sort of screaming at officials, hanging out of Logan Paul, everything we hate in hating people. So they're now the bad guys. And I don't know. I think the Raiders +10 feels like a smart play. I was almost put them on the money line to be my long shot, actually, if I'm honest. But I'm going to stick with the +10.
I haven't seen the Logan Paul. Oh yeah, I've just seen it there now. I'll have to have a good look at that. Thanks for that, Sam. Raiders +10, Broncos -6. Judah, if you just give me your Packers selection here first in any other bets, and we'll cover the Bengals with yourself and Drew now.
Yeah, I'm excited to be disagreeing with Drew again here. I'm going to go with the Packers -5.5. I think at the core of this, we talk about point spreads meaning multiple things. Number one, they're a reflection of kind of fundamental value of teams. How much better is X team than Y team, kind of on points on a neutral or whatever it might be. But points also exist in real games. And this is a Panthers offense that has been absolutely dreadful. And I don't think it's one thing to say, oh, they're like ranked 31st, they're ranked 32nd in offense. And that means something different than like actually looking at the scale of how bad this Panthers offense is, which is a team that has not scored 2 offensive touchdowns in almost 3 months. They're an absolute train wreck by every efficiency metric. It tells the same story. They cannot move the ball. Like, yes, the Packers struggle against the run. That doesn't really matter. The Panthers have had plenty of matchups against beatable run defenses. They can't score. Bryce Young is horrible, at least in his current state. The Panthers are just awful on offense. And the Packers, yes, they have not. The defense has been terrible. I don't think Bryce Young's capable of throwing for 400 yards like Baker Mayfield was, but this offense has been really good. And I think that maintains itself. The Panthers have been improved on defense. I don't think that really matters. The Packers are throwing the ball a bunch. They should be getting both of their running backs back for this one. I anticipate them having success both through the air and on the ground. And as I was saying, points kind of reflect actual points on the field. And I don't really see a path for the Packers not scoring kind of 2 to 3 touchdowns here. And I'd be very, very, very surprised if this is the spot where the Panthers suddenly find their magic and score 2 touchdowns. Their offense has really been dreadful. I'm more than happy to lay the points here with the Packers 5.5.
Okay, yeah, Drew. So last week you backed Panthers +3. They won 9-7. And now I know that the Panthers are still an awful football team. So most of what you just said you'll agree with. So just tell me why we're backing them on the money line here in your long shots. Come in again there, Drew.
They learned how to win, man. They got the taste of it now. I honestly had a really tough time picking a long shot this week. I was like, do I want to make a case for the Patriots? No, not really. How about Las Vegas? Nah. Giants? No. I landed on the Panthers largely just because they're like among the teams that are like real dogs this week. If there is one team that has a unit that I think is being mispriced, it's the Panthers, and it's their defense. Jero Evero, a guy that I've always had a ton of respect for, has really gotten this unit playing very well since they came off the bye. And now they're at basically full strength, which has mattered a ton. They have really, really effective run defensive and specific scheme wrinkles that frustrated the bejesus out of the Falcons in a game that, like, honestly, the fact that the Falcons didn't get more than 7 points in that game was pretty wild. And I credit that to the Panthers defense and particularly the coaching. Ultimately, the Panthers offense is still an absolute train wreck. However, they did find a little bit of success on the ground against the Falcons. They're figuring out some kind of ways to utilize a running attack that's been useless for most of the season, and finding ways to kind of take a little bit of the pressure off Bryce Young, which is huge because he has no one to throw to and is not looking especially comfortable or happy anyway. So this is a decent opportunity for the Panthers, I think, going up against the Packers defense that you can run on. And is in a little bit of a dire straits right now. I mean, the critical, the critical voices about the Packers defensive scheming and Joe Barry's performance as a coach in his 5 years in Green Bay are getting to the crescendo of everyone knows it and everyone is asking questions why. And there could be a little bit of quit going on with this Packers defense. There's almost certainly going to be a huge amount of turnover in terms of personnel, considering who's getting compensated what and how they're playing right now. So yeah, there's a lot of warning signs that the Packers defense just is going to still be a potential liability in this one, which puts all that much more pressure on Jordan Love up into what I think is a sneaky tough test. So I like +5 more than I like the money line, surely, but I think there's a decent chance that the best unit in this game is Panthers D.
It'll be an interesting game, I have to say that. And before we get to the other guys' long shots, Drew, take it away on the Bengals, because I know Judah agrees. I'm surprised this didn't make your best bet, just the way you've been talking about Jake Browning the last week or two.
I thought about it. If it was a Sunday game, maybe, just because we want this to have a little more shelf life, right?
Yeah, it's spot on.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't understand this. The Steelers won a bunch of coin flip games this year against bad teams, and it has, in a way, anchored them too high in terms of market rating. That's my sincere opinion. The defensive injuries have taken a toll on this unit to where you really aren't afraid of TJ Watt anymore. And there's not a lot else going on that really spooks you. The health and situation of the safeties of the Steelers is wild. Like, it looks like they're probably going to have to elevate 2 practice squad safeties in order to have 3 available, based on suspensions and injuries right now, which is crazy. Zach Taylor is the first time that they played these guys. I went back and watched a lot of that game to try to get a sense of, like, was Jake Browning just nervous? Like, did the Steelers defense do something special? Like, what happened in that game? And it was a weird game with, like, extremely few possessions. Like, there just wasn't a lot of opportunity in that game. And the couple second half opportunities the Bengals had, I felt like Zach Taylor didn't really know what he was working with in Jake Browning in terms of what he wanted to let him do. And since that game, he has opened up the offense for Browning to the tune of he's playing at one of the higher levels of all the quarterbacks in the NFL, which is insane. But the tape is saying it. The numbers are saying it. Like, Jake Browning is playing quarterback very well right now. And I think he can take advantage of the weaknesses of the Steelers, and maybe this should have been my best bet, but yeah, Bengals, I think being under 3 points to me feels criminal. So good luck to Mason Rudolph and whoever plays wide receiver for them. I mean, that the offensive side of the ball isn't even worth diving into for the Steelers, even though they're up against a pretty weak unit in the Bengals defense. I still just don't really love any of the vibes coming out of Pittsburgh right now. And Mike Tomlin picked my pocket last week, calling timeouts when Shane Steichen was perfectly comfortable kneeling that game out. Put 3 more points on the board, took that total over, and it was a tilting moment, to say the least, on Saturday. I would not be disappointed to see him finish under 500 for the first time in his career and have lots of people really reflect carefully on that, because I do not love sort of the direction of the Steelers franchise at the moment. But we'll save some of those thoughts for the offseason, I guess.
Yeah, we will. Looking forward to them. Judah, it's not fun setting you up for an agreement with Drew here. So
yeah,
you're doubling down on the Bengals.
Yeah, some fighting words from Drew there. Though I do mostly agree with him. I think this is a 2-sided play. Number one, yes, the Bengals defense has been absolutely atrocious, but similar to what we were talking about with the Niners and Ravens, when you have such a bad offense in the Steelers going up against a even bad defense against the Bengals, I think the fact that the Steelers offense is so bad matters more than kind of this matchup. It doesn't just meet somewhere in the middle. If you look at the Steelers' ability to generate coverage mistakes, the tight windows they throw, all of this would suggest they have some major schematic issues. This is something we've been talking about all season. And I really am wanting to sell the Steelers offense, which is still somehow power ranked. This team is not in the bottom 5, which is remarkable to me, seeing as they've played over the past 2 months, even the full season for that matter. And on the flip side, I don't think the market is kind of fully adjusted to Jake Browning. I think this guy is the real deal, at least in turn. I don't think he's Joe Burrow, but he's not just some ordinary backup quarterback. If you look at any of the metrics, the one that particularly stands out to me is he is a have this stat called destroy rate, which is essentially when the defense makes a coverage mistake and you're not under pressure. How often do you as a quarterback kind of scramble for negative yardage, take a sack, or throw into a tight window, aka not the open window that a coverage mistake has done? And he's been terrific at that. And that's kind of like this game manager guy. He is going to take what is given to him. And the Bengals offense has been successful because of that. Throw in the fact that this is a Steelers defense that's absolutely bleeding explosive plays. The Bengals have been doing a terrific job generating those explosive plays. I think it's a very exploitable matchup. And again, points reflect real points in a real game. And I see this as a Steelers offense that will struggle to get to multiple scores. And the Bengals can very easily cover the 6.5, just as they kind of continue on the pace they've been going for the past couple of weeks. Just taking advantage of the fact that the Bengals are still a little bit underrated relative to market and the Steelers are way overrated, kind of combine those matchup factors. And I think this is a sneaky spot for the Bengals to cover the 6.5 and maybe even cover a bigger spread than that.
Okay, 6.5 and beyond for Judah. Sam, we covered the Niners already, but you like the alternative handicap here against the Ravens.
Yeah, just an extension of that, really. I'm taking the 9.5 on the Niners. Past 4 games have been just some incredible scoring, 45, 28, 42, 31. And in those games, they've won by 16 points, 12 points, 23 points, 18 points, a combined 69 points. Again, one of those was against the Super Bowl favorite in the Eagles. Admittedly, one was against the Cards and 2 were against divisional rivals, the Rams. And I think this is a team, unlike the Chiefs, who we mentioned earlier, who seem to not be able to accelerate away from other teams. This is a team who, when they get a lead, can absolutely steamroll the opposition. And I think there's a real chance of that here. And I'm happy to back it. They are just the best offense by such a big distance for me that I think they could quite easily win big here. So at the price, I'm going to get involved.
Okay, that's our long shot section. Moving on to week 16 best bets. And Sam, we will stick with you on the Bills against the Chargers. What's pissed me off more about the Chargers season than anything is the loss of, there's no hope. There's no even a glimmer of hope of a playoff. We don't have our quarterback fit. It's just been a depressing year. We've sacked our head coach. Bill Belichick could be taking over a bit like Jose Mourinho coming in football next year, Sam. So look, take it away and why you don't like the Chargers as your best bet.
Yes. Well, look, interim coach, backup quarterback starting, and a Bills offense that are coming into this absolutely red hot. I think that's a recipe for disaster by all accounts. And admittedly, I think the bookies thought that to start with. The line started, I think, at 14, and it's coming to 11.5 now. And I potentially might go a bit shorter. I don't know. But this is, we know Chargers defense. They're allowing 261.4 passing yards per game, the 3rd highest in the NFL. And they're about to face Josh Allen, who's one of the best quarterbacks with arguably one of the better arms in the NFL. They can't run block. They're rated worst in the league right now. They are now onto their 3rd choice center, and they're having to rely on a guy at quarterback who has a name like some sort of horrific act on Urban Dictionary. I just want no part in this Chargers team. I'm going to bet against them every week to the end of the season. And I'm sure we will see some sort of uptick compared with last week, which isn't really hard. But I think the Bills they're on a mission now. They have the bit between their teeth, and I think they're just going to absolutely steamroll the Chargers, unfortunately, Dan.
No, it's okay. I'm just thinking of all my Chargers futures. Trying to take on the Chiefs in the division as well, which was half right about considering their record. But anyway, Drew.
Sam not really accounting for the fact that Brandon Staley to Gift Smith might be one of the bigger coaching upgrades we've had in a while. I have no idea who Gift Smith is, but he's got to be better than Brandon Staley. So
no doubt.
That's a huge part of this one. No, I don't have any.
Bill Belichick maybe next year, Drew.
I don't have any.
Both agree on best bet.
I don't have any interest in the Chargers this week. I'll enjoy watching that game on Peacock with no commercials in the 4th quarter. That'll kind of be cool, actually. I'm excited to see what they do with that space. I will not be involved in the broadcast. I was not invited. But that said, the best bet for me this week is going to be Colts on the money line. Frankly, we probably should have said it off the top. Like, almost everything I bet this week is pretty low confidence. I'm staking down. I'm trying not to ruin my holiday season with a bunch of coin flips in a week where all the numbers look pretty darn good. This is the one side that I sincerely disagree with, though, and it is that the Colts are dogs in this game. I don't get it. I think the Colts defense is getting healthy and getting good at the right time of the season, and I think the Falcons are in absolute free fall right now. I think the move from Ritter to Heineke, not only is it desperate, it's maybe even a downgrade. I don't rate Heineke well at all. He is not like, he's not coming into a situation like a lot of other quarterbacks this time of year are, where they're just a little bit of an unknown. How do we defend this guy? Is he good? Like, these are not questions that we don't have answers to about Taylor Heineke. And the fact that there's a loss of confidence in that locker room around what Art Smith is doing, I think is pretty obvious. And the Falcons defense dealing with a number of injuries that has really kind of limited their effectiveness in the back half of the season, I think is pretty straightforward. They don't have much of a pass rush going right now. And if you can throw away from AJ Terrell, I think you have opportunity to play a clean game if you're Gardner Minshew here. So I think the Colts get a win. And in a week where I am pretty cold on the Jaguars and the Jaguars and the Texans, Colts for the longest price in the AFC South doesn't make a ton of sense to me. So if you want to split your stake here, and I did, on some Colts and some Colts to win the South, I think that makes sense. There is absolutely scope for the Colts to be hosting a home playoff game as the 3 seed in this year's playoff race, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, Judah, I should have really let you in first. That would have been good hosting, considering it just looks like you're copying Drew's homework for the last couple of minutes. Take it away.
Wow, really, the accisations are.
I got it in the sheet first, just for the people behind the scenes. I got it in first.
I feel like I was like fumbling around, going with the Bengals here or the Colts. Maybe I should have, changed depending on the sections here. But yeah, I do agree with Drew here. I was ready to back the Colts back when they were slight favorites. And Desmond Ritter was supposed to start. Now they announced Taylor Heineke, and the line moved further in that direction, as if there's like any meaningful upgrade. I think would be very, very hard for the market to project, yet they are doing that. And I agree with all the points Drew made. This is a matchup that the Falcons pass rush really struggles to get home, which is huge for the Colts. I don't think they can take advantage of the Colts' weaknesses of the secondary. I mean, they're very attackable on the outside, and maybe they'll give Drake London more than 2 targets for the first time all season. It's just not something I anticipate the Falcons doing. And the last point I'll make here is the Falcons are a real pass funnel. They are far easier to pass against than run against, which in theory could lead to some issues if you're not, if you don't have an elite offense. But for Gardner Minshew and the Colts, in obvious passing situations, whether that's kind of third downs or spots where the defense knows where you're going to throw, which would kind of happen often in a spot where there's a pass funnel, Gardner Minshew has been top 10 in basically every single category you can think of from an efficiency standpoint. I imagine that the Colts are going to throw the ball a lot. They're going to have success. I don't really understand this line, quite frankly. They've been better in basically every facet of the game, and I don't think Taylor Heineke represents an upgrade over Desmond Ritter. The Colts are the better team. Give me their money line plus money.
Okay, yeah, plus money, as the guy said, 204 on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. We are done for 2023. As we mentioned at the top of the show, all 3 of the guys were putting on a bye week for week 17, so they come refreshed, ready to go for the playoffs in a couple of weeks' time. Drew, it's been an emotional year. We've got about a minute left of our time here. If you want to say anything to listeners, a happy Christmas to anyone.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you, as always, for the opportunity to participate in this show. I love being part of the Matchbook family, and hope you guys have enjoyed all of our content this year. I'm pretty proud of our performance as a group. I think we've done well, and hopefully provided some insight beyond just winning bets and some entertainment in an NFL season that was, fraught with its limitations in terms of entertainment value. So yeah, it's been a great one. Happy holidays. Cheers to you guys, and cheers to the folks watching, and have a happy New Year.
Yeah, Sam, for you, look, it's good. It's a great time of year. We mentioned this at the top of the show. There's so much sport going on, but be glad of the break of it as well, and come back refreshed in January ahead of playoff time.
Yeah, we've got some seriously fun games to look forward to in the new year. So let's just wrap up this year, finish on a high, prepare ourselves, wrap ourselves in cotton wool to make sure we're healthy, and then hit the playoffs running.
Yeah, Judah, no extracurricular activities now. Judah, I want you refreshed, ready to go for playoff time on the Matchbook Pod.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, look, the grind does not stop. Nothing will stop us. No Christmas, no New Year's. The grind stops after the Super Bowl. We have all off season to rest. But in all seriousness, happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah.
This is a blast as always, and I can't wait for the week 18 and the playoffs. There's so much fun ahead of us.
Yeah, looking forward to it, guys. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone listening. Thanks for all the kind comments on social and YouTube throughout the season. We'll be back first week of January to preview week 18. It will be of the NFL season. Enjoy the Christmas football. If you're having a bet on the Matchup Betting Exchange, enjoy it, but please do so responsibly. Other than that, take care. Chat to you in 2024. Bye-bye.